We're live. It's in the morning. Get your projects done. A little project morning motivation for you guys. And sometimes I need that too. It's easier to, and especially as it starts getting colder and colder. It's not cold yet, but it will be. And then to go out and work in the garage and stuff is gets harder and harder to get motivated to get that stuff done. So go get some stuff done while it's still nice-ish outside. But this morning, we're going to talk about superchargers, and more importantly, I have a whole bunch of data provided by the guys over at Kenny Bell on the power consumption and the temperatures and all kinds of good like techie stuff that I wanted to talk about, because I'm sending over that little AMR supercharger, which hopefully they're going to run on a blower dyno, which will be very, very cool. So that'll make for good video. But my question was this, and this is something I've wanted to know for a long time. And I got this answer kind of from doing the Super Richie blower dyno at Westech, using the LS motor to drive the little AMR supercharger, and then measuring the airflow, and then measure how much power it took away from the motor while we were running this. Because if we run the motor by itself, run the LS motor that we had, it's like a 440 horsepower motor, had a little Brian Tooley Racing Truck Norris cam in, a fast manifold, and it was the L33. And then we run it, perfectly repeatable, runs the same number every time within a horsepower or so. And then we're driving the supercharger, and then we drove the supercharger both with it open and then with a restrictor on it producing boost. Not exact, but for a quick throw together one day Super Richie blower dyno, it worked good. And so we could see how much power it took to spin the blower in both of those situations. And then we tested it with the factory inlet and outlet, and with a bigger inlet and outlet. And so I got lots of data. So it showed how much power it takes to drive. And there's a lot of confusion by people when I was doing that. They're like, yeah, but why is it not making more power? Why is the blower not making more power? Because we're not running it through the motor. That's not what we're doing. We're just spinning the blower. And so the guys from Kenny Bell have a dedicated blower dyno, which they can regulate everything on it and test everything. And so I have lots and lots of supercharger dyno data. So I thought that we would talk about that and then ask you guys if you wanted to see dedicated videos on stuff where we could test a lot of the popular kinds of superchargers, because they have lots of data on various like factory Eaton blowers, M90s, 112s, 122s, and some of the aftermarket stuff. So they have lots of good data and we can see from the data that they have, because what they'll do is take the supercharger and run it at different blower speeds. They'll run it at different pressures. We can make this amount of boost or this amount of boost or this amount of boost. We just adjust that. We just regulate it. And it could make that boost at different RPMs. And so you got all kinds of different combinations. And while they're doing that, they're also measuring, okay, what is the temperature at that boost level? And the nice thing about it is they're not doing it where they just like make a quick rip and on a chassis dyno or something, or even kind of on an engine dyno, although the run on the engine dyno typically takes longer than it does on a chassis dyno, especially as we go up in power. Because if you get a supercharged Cobra or LS or whatever it is, and it's making 500, 600, 700 horsepower at the tire, the amount of time that it takes to make that pass, the amount of time that it takes to make that run goes down when you go up in power, because it spins the roller faster. That's one of the ways that it's measuring the power output. So, you're at under boost and under power for a shorter amount of time, the more power that you get. But the nice thing about the blower dyno is they can just stabilize it and go, hey, look, at this boost level, here's what the temperature will get to if you stabilize it and run it for a period of time. So they can do all that, which is very, very cool. So that, for me, this is my jams. lots of tech, lots of data, all sorts of stuff to think about and test. And one of the things that I wanted to know about, and one of the things the reason that I tested an open flow on the AMR blower versus having some sort of restrictor on it, because I wanted to find out, I was trying to wrap my head around which situation will have a higher drive pressure or have a higher power consumption, a drive loss. If you ask the supercharger to spin in free flow, it moves the most amount amount of air. We know that. All the blower dyno data says that if you have it spin at 5 pounds versus having it spin the same speed at 10 pounds, at 10 pounds, it's going to flow less air because you're restricting the outlet essentially. So it flows less air. So if it flows more air at a lower boost level or no boost, does it take more power to drive that? Is it doing more work? And so that was my question. That was my internal question. And so I kept asking for a particular test, and they have that data. So we can talk about that tonight. And their data correlates with the stuff that I got when I was running on the Super Ritchie blower dyno, because when we ran this and we ran it open and it flowed the most amount of air, it cost the least amount of power. So it cost more power to spin the blower against the pressure, even though it was flowing less air. So there you go. As we go up in boost, at the same blower speed, as we go up in boost, it requires more power to drive the supercharger. So doing everything that you can to improve the power output of your naturally aspirated motor to bring that the boost down helps in a number of ways. Obviously, it will help you make power because you're starting out at a higher amount and then you're going to end at a higher amount at any given boost level. But if you also bring the boost down, a couple of things are happening. One is you're bringing the charge temperature down because a lower pressure was going to bring with it a lower temperature. And then the other thing is you have less parasitic loss associated with driving the supercharger. So it's kind of like a double whammy. So that's why we see when we do this, that's why we have an increase in airflow, we have a lower charge temperature, and we have a higher starting point because we're making more NA power. So all of that is good. So the data that I have for you is the data that was sent over today on this Kenny Bell is interesting. So they were running this blower at about 14,000 RPM blower speed, 13,916 on one, and then 13,966. So within 50 RPM, which is pretty close in terms of blower speed. One of them was running 24 PSI. So they have the discharge, basically a valve on the discharge regulated so that it could produce that boost. And then they have 15 PSI on the other. So a difference of 9 PSI between the two runs. And what we see is a dramatic change in airflow. At the higher boost level, this supercharger at near 14,000 RPM, or in this case, closer to 13,900 RPM, the airflow was 1,362 CFM. So 1,360 CFM essentially. When they brought the boost down to 15 PSI at the same blower speed, 1,459. So almost 100 CFM more at the lower boost level. So again, like I said, if you improve the power output of the NA motor and you reduce the boost, although if you increase the power output of the NA motor, you're not going to reduce it. You're likely not going to reduce it by 9 PSI because that would actually be quite a bit. But they have different levels of these, and these are two that I picked out. So we had 100 CFM difference in airflow going from one boost level to the other spun at the same blower speed. So that's a lot. The other thing is a power consumption. So at the higher boost pressure, run at the same within 50 RPM of the same blower speed, you have the blower was consuming 150 horsepower. So it took 150 horsepower to drive the supercharger at 14,000 RPM, producing 24 pounds of boost. When we brought the boost down to 15 pounds, it only required 110 horsepower. So you got a 40 horsepower gain just from power consumption, even spinning the blower at the same speed. So you had the same pulley on it. You're spinning at the same speed, but you brought the boost down and you brought the power consumption down by 40 horsepower in this case, of 82 kilowatts versus 112 kilowatts for you kilowatt people out there, because this is what it was measured. That's actually how it was measured, and then I had to convert it. So it's really interesting data, and there's a whole range of this. I'll take a look and see at how far this went. So in this test, they went from about 10,000 RPM all the way up to 18,000 RPM. So it was quite a bit. You know, it's a big spread, and all at the same boost level, because you can regulate the boost. You could also, as we've shown, we can also change the boost level. So, and we have power consumption numbers for all of that RPM range, which is very, very cool. We have temperature, the discharge temperatures for all of those, and the discharge temperature, not surprisingly, is fairly close because the boost pressure is the same, although it's not exact. So it is interesting to see that and talk about that. What else do we have? So we got the change in CFM. Obviously, we have a dramatic change in airflow from, you know, going up in blower speed. So it's pretty cool stuff. It's a lot of really, really good data. And then they have, like I said, they have it for a lot of different superchargers. So I'm thinking that, in fact, this could be our poll today. So the poll for today, for this morning, hopefully everyone's doing good. Should I do videos on the blower dyno results of common superchargers? And I'll even put PD superchargers because they didn't run any centrifugal superchargers that I know of. Excuse me. Let's see here. We have 100% poll. Yay. And we'll see how long that's going to, excuse me. So we'll see how long that's going to stay 100%. So good morning. Good morning. Everybody hit the like button. I want to see the results of the AMR 500. I do too. It'll be interesting. I haven't. The question is, good morning. I got a quick question. Have you tried the new VS Racing Turbo Gen 3, and is it much different than the Gen 2? I don't know. I only have a Gen 2. I haven't tried the Gen 3, but actually, if you called and spoke to Byron, he would be able to tell you exactly what the difference is. He's a pretty sharp guy. Anything you do gets blown up in price. You need to make your own supercharger kits and turbo kits. Yeah, I'm not really doing it for that. So Kenny Bell for the 2006 Mustang project. Kenny Bell says a couple of months for carb smog certification. Can you compare with other twin screws? They have run Whipples, which is, I think, the only other twin screw. I've set of 317 heads. They have tiny cracks between the valves. Should just get another set or pressure test them. We've run lots of stuff with the crack between the valves, but those heads are so cheap and easy to come by that you should just get another set. I wouldn't put a bunch of money into doing valve jobs or something like that on them. I would just get a different set. And I don't know what your combination is, but anything that you're taking a 317 off of, any of the other factory heads are going to be an upgrade from that. The long-term stabilization would be important for tow, truck, and boat. Yeah, I agree on the temperature thing. Although the intercooler for most of these applications that you have on the Kenny Bell stuff, other than the 5-liter Mustang, obviously, but the air-to-water intercooling that they have tends to stabilize the discharge temperature, at least after the intercooler. So even if you have a 10 or 20 degree change going into it, a lot of times the intercooler will negate that difference. I have a small shop and it's just me listening to your content. Good. Do you have it on all the time? Doing brake lines. Uh-oh, in the rust belt. That's not good. I remember seeing how rusty all this stuff was when I was back in Ohio. When I worked at Land and Sea Dynos, I've run one of those. We built eddy current dynos that would hold up to 1,600 foot-pounds at any given RPM on hub and chassis dynos. Cool. Driving the supercharger is parasitic loss. Yeah, it takes power to drive the supercharger. Which superchargers are illegal in California? A Mustang GT and Mach 1 for a 2021. I don't know. You just have to go online and see. Modular power. Yep. What did I miss? We're talking about supercharger dyno testing. Just the supercharger. I got the first vote in. Nice. So we're still at 100%. Wow. With 28 votes, we're still at the 100. So that means I got to take a picture before it changes, right? I'm sure somebody's going to rush and change it for me. Too late. I already got the 100. It's already official. There's also TVS blowers. A TVS is not a twin screw though. That's still a roots blower, but they have tested a lot of. They've tested a lot of twin screws. I mean, a lot of roots blowers as well. Richard, do you have any experience between piston and diaphragm wastegates? Who makes the piston wastegate? I don't remember running one of those. There are builders that kit Whipples for other applications like the 2006 Mustang, which Whipple discontinued. Take a look at Superchargers online, and they have a bunch of kits. I think it would be interesting, especially ones that are common to use in hot rodding, probably good for long-term recurring views also. Yeah, I want to have it be a video that people would go to, forever, so that they could look at dyno data, and then that way people could argue about, well, which supercharger is more efficient. Well, you can see right there. Here's the temperature, here's the power consumption, here's the boost. Midday live chat, that's right. Sure, like the throttle response on superchargers, especially if you put a big throttle body on them, then they're like overly responsive. Blue collar, you got a personal best 1360 at 101.8. Nice. Chopacabra cam, headers, LQ4, 411s. Too tight of a converter, 4,800 pounds of the driver, 335 at the tire. Nice. Is it blue collar? Is that a stock converter? Is it like an 1800 RPM kind of thing? I'm going off the Summit and VS Racing brand wastegates. Can you do throttle body testing on an NALS, like ideal size, then two that are too small and then two that are too big, just to find out the sweet spot? There's no sweet spot. The throttle body that you put on your LS should match the throttle opening in your intake manifold, period. A big throttle body is never going to hurt power. It's only going to help it. And it might do nothing because you already have enough throttle body size. The throttle body is just an air valve going into the intake manifold. The intake manifold really is going to be the deciding factor in terms of power. The only way that you could reduce power is if you restrict the air flow going into the throttle body relative to your power output. So there's no ideal size throttle body. There's only one that either restricts power or makes power, or is too big but still doesn't make any more power. And the too big one doesn't hurt power. The only thing that it does is if you put a big throttle opening on, they tend to be a little bit touchy at light throttle positions. What about the Eaton 2650? Yeah, they've tested those. They've run those, but again, a TVS is a roots blower. It's a twisted lobe because they're trying to make the roots blower more efficient and not be a straight lobe. So they're trying to make it more like a twin screw, which is a more efficient supercharger design. I mean, you don't have to listen to either Eaton or Kenny Bell or anybody telling you that. Just go to the Society of Automotive Engineers. Just go to any SAE paper ever written, and you can read about what they know, what physics know about supercharger designs. Are you going to run all aftermarket? I'm not going to run all aftermarket blowers because all of this testing is done in Sweden. But lucky for me, over the years, they have tested lots and lots of different blowers. So I can take their blower dyno data and do videos on it. Is Whipple better than Kenny Bell? Kenny Bell seems like a mid-2000s technology. I don't know why you're saying that, because that doesn't make any sense. Maybe you're thinking that it was popular in the 2000s. The Kenny Bell is a newer rotor pack than a Whipple is. It's a 4.6 lobe rotor, and it's not a 3.5. So that's not an accurate statement. It's transmission special. It's supposed to be 2800. I see it flash only 2200. I can't remember, was yours a 4.8? Oh no, it's a 6 liter. Huh, it should be more than that. L92 with a 6L80 or L92 with a 4L80. Which one is best? Well, more gears I think are better, but as long as it's strong enough to deal with whatever power output you have coming out of your L92. What supercharger tends to be the most efficient? Well, if you compare a root supercharger to a twin screw is more efficient, meaning that, by what I mean by efficient, is at any given boost level, the charge temperature should be lower on a twin screw. And also, particularly with the rotor pack and stuff that they have on a Kenny Bell, it should require less boot or less power to drive the supercharger. So you get, a little bit of a double gain there. I've got an M90 with 230,000 miles. Yeah, these Wrecking Yard M90s that I have seem to still be working and making plenty of boost. Wish Kenny Bell would make a cast blower. Yeah, but there's a reason that they're making a billet blower, because it's stronger and it has less case distortion. Mid 2000, my buddy's Mustang has 730 horsepower to the wheels. Yeah, a lot of guys were upgrading back in the day, all of the factory blower stuff. So like when the Lightning came out, when the 0304 Cobra, all of the 5.4 and 5.8 Shelby GT500s and stuff. Shelby was using Kenny Bells for a lot of their 1,000 horsepower stuff that they were doing for their 800 and something horsepower deals, and then their 1,000 horsepower deals. Email, right? I'll send you an email back as soon as we get off. Can a positive displacement blower be too large for an application? Do they have a minimum efficiency threshold versus speed and pressure ratio? The problem with oversizing the blower is, especially for your power output, is let's say you have a 1,500 horsepower blower and you want to make 800 horsepower and you have to slow it way down to make it only make 800 horsepower. Then the response rate of the blower wouldn't be as good as spinning a smaller blower a little faster. Hot Mess, I don't know if they have ported blowers or not. Is Kenny Bell able to take fuel going through the rotors like a traditional route? I don't know. I'd have to ask them. If I don't remember, I thought that they told me somebody with some sort of Mopar ran a carburetor deal on it, but I don't know. A fuel consumption comparison would be interesting. Yeah, we're not going to do that on the dyno. That's you. If you're interested in fuel mileage, that's a cruise RPM thing and not a supercharger comparison. Is a Ford Racing screw Kenny Bell Whipple? Ford Racing has offered a number of different blowers over the years. Ford Racing doesn't offer a Kenny Bell, but I don't know if they've offered. I think that they may have offered Whipples, but the ones that I've seen have been usually Eaton's. I've noticed that heat dissipates better with a cast material. I don't think that that's an accurate statement. The AC Delco supercharger oil is so hard to find. What would you suggest for supercharger oil? For what supercharger are you talking about? So did we have one person vote no just to throw it off? I would be curious to find out how well my porting works. Well, you could run a stock blower on there and then run your ported blower on there and then see what the difference is. Do you have any testing data on the Celine V1 2.3 blowers from the early 2000s? They probably do have 2.3 blower. I'm sure that they've run 2.3 blowers. I don't know about exactly which one was on the Celine, but it's a 2.3. I think that's a 2.3 Eaton, right? I have some. I think that the guys at Brian Tooley have run some ported LSA blowers and maybe ported 2650s on stuff. So I'll ask Brian to see if they have any dyno data. You're probably one of the guys that ask why there's an hour-long video. I get that comment a lot. I'm not going to watch an hour-long video. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to. This is a live feed. This is a different kind of thing. The aluminum intake's heat soak bad enough to reduce power numbers. I'm running a Typhoon intake on my 5.3, and I've had many comments that the intake is actually killing my power instead of helping. The intake manifold will get hot. My question is, I don't know if when you're running at wide open throttle, is there time for the air to grab heat from your intake manifold as it goes by? There's a boundary layer of dead airspace between the flowing air and the surface of the intake manifold. It acts as an insulator already. And then when you do the math on the airspeed at wide open throttle of the air going by there, it's like, the example that I use is like there's a fire and you wave your hand through the fire. Well, did your hand get burned? No, because it was going by too fast. Did it raise the temperature of your hand? Probably not. Think you could get TIC Performance to send you an air to water intercooler to do various tests with? I have run one of, I think it was a TIC one, if I remember right. You're talking about the bricks that go in the high ram things. They work, and they work for whatever, whatever the combination of flow rate and size is. How big was the opening of the restrictor for the AMR test? Would we see extra flow with a smaller opening? You're not going to see extra flow by making the opening smaller. You're going to see less flow if you make the restrictor smaller. My TSP 427 LS3 for my C6 Z06 should be ready next week. Good. Oh, the car farm guys. I think direct injection benefits more from an intercooler than any blow through or draw through setup. I'm new to the LS world. What upgrades do you need before putting a Ford Supercharger? So, do you have the adapters to install a Ford Supercharger on there? And then if you take a look at the videos I have up on putting that Ford Supercharger on the LS with the adapters, we also did other things, a camshaft and throttle body, and so you could see what changes those things make. AC Delco supercharge oil. Is the supercharger oil, isn't it just like 75-90? Have you done any tests on thrush mufflers? Man, I haven't. I think the guys at Engine Masters did a big muffler test. I'd have to see if the thrush mufflers were one of those. Where can I get the adapters? Well, you have to have the adapters to run that supercharger. Demuse Engineering is the name of the company that we used. There's a lot of content that can be made regarding positive displacement blowers, 190 versus 2.3 versus 265. Porting differences. Yeah, the porting difference thing would I think be splitting hairs, but oh, you want to see the bubbler deletes? How many AMRs does it take to supercharge an LS? A lot. 4 of them would be like 600 horsepower. So it depends on what your NA power output is. 3 of them on a stock motor would probably produce boost. A Lysholm supercharger. Are Kenny Bell superchargers the best on the market? I don't know what your definition of best is. What positive displacement blower makes the nicest blower whine? The AMR 500 definitely had some noise. Would you consider putting on tuning classes? I'm not a tuner, so I'd be the wrong guy to do that. 3 blowers, not sequential, and not stacked. They would just be run independently, all of them blowing into the same thing. They wouldn't be sequential or compound. They'd be parallel. Let's see, Roush M90 from a 427R Stage 3 Roush had the best blower whine. The old 03 Cobra Kenny Bell kits would whine amazingly. Magson made a twin screw a while ago. Magson doesn't make a twin screw, or they didn't license a twin screw because they would have had to license it from somebody. They didn't make a twin screw. They make a Eaton made a TVS, which is a twisted lobe, but it's not a twin screw. Why doesn't Matt have a tuning course? He probably should. Matt does a lot of tuning. Richard, we haven't talked about my compound boost setup on my Ecotech in a long time. Compound boost stuff is cool. Because, if one boosty thing is good, then twin screws have an advantage in power production, but many roots blowers can put out an impressive amount of power. Yeah, just because one has a lower charge temperature or less parasitic loss rudder, that doesn't answer usually the big question. The big question is, and this is the reason why the 2650 is such a popular blower, is because it allows people to make the power that they want, and it's and it's less expensive than a twin screw is typically. So that's a good combination. If you want to make 1,000 horsepower and this blower will do it, and it will do it for less money, that's why people pick it. It's just like with the camshaft thing. Yeah, if you build a custom cam, you might be able to, maybe you could eke out more power, I guess. But if it costs twice as much as another cam, people are just not going to buy it. Well, I found compound boost to be very hot. Compound boost really elevates the pressure, which I don't like, honestly. Compound boost, 4-banger, and a Tupperware mobile making 600 horsepower and 2,200 pounds. That's a good combination. We had a big twin screw air compressor that run 150 psi all day long. It didn't seem to get that hot. A twin screw has internal compression, which a roots blower does not. A roots blower is an air mover, so it grabs air from one side and moves it to the other. There's actually internal compression taking place inside the screws, inside the male and female. But that's why it's more efficient. That's why it takes less power to drive it, and why the charge temperature ultimately is lower. It's a better design, but we get that all the time. Oh, look, this one's hotter to the touch. Okay, but you don't care about the temperature of the blower. You care about the air. You care about what the blower is doing. Yeah, 3/8 tube. We can try to test that whenever I run some kind of blower on there. Is the 3/8 tube 3/8 OD or 3/8 ID? They're just trying to get all the oil out of there, right? That's what they're doing. But that's 1400 CFM. So I'll be curious to see what I was at 28 horsepower on the little AMR, which kind of seems a little high now that I look at these numbers, but we'll see. So wait, twin screws and TVSs are different? Yeah, one of them is a roots blower and one of them is a twin screw blower. A TVS is not a twin screw. A TVS is a roots blower. It's a twisted lobe roots blower, like I said before, which is a roots blower trying to be more like a twin screw to be more efficient. And it is. The twisted lobe TVS is more efficient than the previous design, but it's still not a twin screw, but it works really well. Like the 2650 TVS stuff is, like I said, it can support over 1,000 horsepower. And if that's what you're looking for and it does it, then that's a win. Twin screw and roots are usually more limited by the inlet restriction more than any other variable, to the point that the differences can be slim or even the opposite of expected roots versus twin screws. So you're saying if you put some other kind of restriction on them, on one of them and not the other one, then that one could be worse? Yeah, that's if you put a restrictor plate on one and not on the other, then yeah, that can happen. But you want to, on any positive displacement blower, whether it's a twin screw or a roots, you want to have the biggest opening going into the blower that you can, so that you'll have the most flow and boost coming out of the supercharger. If you restrict it with a tiny throttle body, then you're going to restrict the blower. What would be better, in your opinion, to get a 5.3 Chevy supercharger or invest in the adapters for the Ford supercharger? I just want to make 500 horsepower, 600 horsepower on my 5.3. Well, you can always put a turbo on it, but the adapter way is one way to go. You just have to contact those people and find out which one is the least expensive route. And also take a look around the internet for other 5.3 blower kits. Vortec has them. TorqueStorm has one. ProCharger has one. Those are all centrifugal blowers. Probably Magnuson might still have one, or Superchargers Online, I'm sure, has one. How much torque does it take to drive the AMR 500? At what blower speed? I just have to look on the dyno thing and give you an RPM. I volunteered to machine parts in the Castle Air Museum. I was surprised to find twin screw compressors to pressurize the plane. So if you get rid of you're thinking about if you get rid of that 3/8 line, the boost loss, that there's going to be a power gain. Well, have you tried plugging it just to see what happens? And just see if the boost goes up? Oh, a P38. Yeah, those are cool. I do like those. So now we're down to 96% because we get a couple of other people that are jumping on the no bandwagon just to be on the no side. People know who you are. Would an automatic transmission on 98 Kenny Bell GT do well? I don't know how strong the automatic transmissions are. They've run blowers on automatic transmission vehicles, but I don't know how strong the transmissions are. A centrifugal or a positive displacement, which one takes more power to drive? Probably a positive displacement, but it also has better boost response. At whatever pressure. Yeah, we didn't make maximum PSI, like at least on the blower dyno. Should you always run 2 intercoolers when running 2 forms of boost, or do you think you could get away with one larger one? You mean after compounding? I think I'd like to see 2. I'd like to see one in between them. Personally, I prefer turbos over supercharging. That's another option. I'll have to ask the guys if they've run. The Vortec guys have run. I think that they have a blower dyno there. I'll have to ask them if they have power consumption numbers on a positive or on a centrifugal supercharger and see what it is. Because I would be interested to see. We know it's going to take power to drive it. I've run a Lyshon blower before. Messaging the facility. I told them that there's always 1 or 2 people that ruin the 100% for the others. He said, I want to know now. No, I was just asking. I was actually asking him how low have they run at what's the lowest boost pressure that they've run on the blower dyno. I want to see if they ever done a free flow. On a free flow on a twin screw is still going to have internal compression. I think he was saying it's about 1.4, so it'd be 5 or 6 pounds coming out of the blower. But if it was unrestricted, then we would see, depending on where they're taking the measurement, we might not see any if it was a free flow thing. And he said, we've just never done that because it's never like that in a real application. I was just more interested to see what the change in airflow was on an unrestricted thing, because that would be the maximum flow rate of the supercharger. So if you had a supercharger that was capable of 1500 horsepower in free flow and you put it on a 1500 horsepower motor, it would just be the parasitic loss taking away from the motor. Boost, it's 3/8 inside diameter. Okay. The power consumption of the supercharger will change with change with engine speed, and then what the boost pressure is at that engine speed. And lucky for us, we have almost all the different engine speeds and combinations of boost. But everyone still wants to know how much does it take to spin this supercharger? Like I said before, some of them can get up near 300 horsepower to drive the supercharger. Yeah, turbos definitely have their place. All of these, having the choice for all of these things is definitely good. Should I put the meth from the car and switch it over to the Hemi because I don't need it with the 2 intercoolers? Are you finding that you don't need it? If you don't need it, you should take it off. Where are we at? 95.5%. You said are the turbos installed yet? Are you asking me if some turbos are installed on something, or are you installing turbos on something? General Motors says it takes 40 horsepower to make 6 pounds of boost on the 6-liter engine with their supercharger. I don't know what supercharger you're talking about. And the 6 pounds of boost it has to be 6 pounds of boost at a given flow rate. So I don't know what that is. I don't know how much power that is. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw the turbo thing and I saw the correct, and so I don't know what point you're trying to make. The boost novice, the thing on the Roush blower is has a very limited audience. The number of people that have that would just be a handful of people, and so the information that thing applies directly to them, it doesn't apply. It doesn't help very many people. But having a different boost, like how much does a boost leak, is a kind of a better video. 6 pounds and 40 horsepower, and the power output, I don't know what power output that they're talking about. Seems like a really low parasitic loss number. Especially if it's, I don't, is it 500 or 600 horsepower or something like that? But maybe we'll see if that sort of data is available. Especially, I'm excited about seeing the all the different kinds of like factory style blowers. Factory blowers, yo. Hot mess. Your a water mess setup, if you're not using it, should help with your charge temperatures. Hello, you guys got some of the small Eaton TVS superchargers? We were searching for that to replace the AMR 500 at the moment, but it is displayed on their website. Can't find them anywhere for sale. What little TVS superchargers are you looking for? I don't remember seeing a TVS that would be as small as like a half-liter TVS. Grana's Racing Supra built-in dyno, new compound boost turbo setup. Yeah, if you're looking for very high pressure ratios, then that's the way to do it. If you're looking to run a giant size turbo to make lots of power, and then add the little turbo, the smaller turbo in a compound deal, so that you could get that second turbo spooled up and get it into its happy place. We need the happy place. Anthony, there's lots of information online for you to search and read about. And obviously, being a mechanic, you need to do it. You need to start taking things apart and putting them back together. You need to start understanding what the internal combustion engine is, and especially a modern internal combustion engine that's an awful lot of electronics now. And I think we answered this already, but I think a centrifugal will take less power to drive at the same flow and boost as a positive displacement blower. But I haven't seen that test, so I can't know that for sure. My GT 500 power loss in bypass mode might have less parasitic loss, but that would only be at zero boost. Under boost, only care about greater than its losses. I don't know what it might have less parasitic loss than what. In bypass mode, when you're cruising around in bypass mode, they're doing that to reduce the power consumption to improve fuel mileage under bypass, and also to recirculate that heated air. Because if you're grabbing air and putting it to the other side of the blower in that lower manifold, you're going to continue to heat it. And if you don't allow it to escape and come back in and cool back off, also, as I said, they do it for fuel mileage, which is important on a factory application. In your opinion, centrifugal versus turbo, you lose the instant low end power. A centrifugal doesn't have instant low end power. A centrifugal has at 2000 RPM, it might be making 1 or 2 pounds. And then, so like, let's say that you have it set so that it makes 10 pounds. It's going to make 10 pounds at, if yours is an import application, 10 pounds at 7,000 RPM. It's only going to make 1 or 2 pounds down at 2000 RPM. So if you nail the throttle at 2000 RPM, you're going to get hardly anything, whatever 2 pounds is or 1 pound is. And then it's going to increase with engine speed. A turbo doesn't do that. A turbo will come on as soon as the NA power had enough power to get the turbo up into its happy spot. And then it comes up and makes 10 pounds. And then just, if you have it wastegated properly, makes 10 pounds and then carries 10 pounds. And what you have is, on a turbo, a lot more average power compared to a centrifugal does. The reason a lot of people go to a centrifugal rather than a turbo, some of them were emissions things. You could buy emissions legal supercharger kits, centrifugals. The other thing is, for like all out racing, a lot of times you're traction limited anyway. So having the boost come on the way that I'm describing and having all the boost come in makes for a traction limited situation. And having a linear power curve like that, a linear boost curve and the attending power curve, on a node prep application or traction limited deal, we're talking about when these things are making from 1500 to 3000 horsepower, let's say. And then, so it's easy for them, rather than having to take power away to get the traction, they've taken power away because of the function of the way that a centrifugal supercharger works. So sometimes for track applications, that's actually beneficial. Are Kenny Bell underrated supercharger? I don't know what your question is. I don't know what you mean by that. So, Admiral, you want a compound roots blower, and I think ideally for a compound thing, a positive displacement blower and then a big turbo seems to be the best combination, because you can, and especially if you could eventually bypass around the supercharger, just have the turbo do its thing once it gets happy, and then have the blower basically to make a what is essentially a more powerful naturally aspirated motor to help spool the big turbo up. That's almost the name of the man who invented the twin screw. I'm familiar with the history of the twin screw stuff. That makes sense. But with a good boost control, can't you do the same thing with a turbo reduced boost? Yeah, you can. If you get really clever with RPM versus boost on your controller. Compressor side of a turbo is a centrifugal supercharger. Only kind of. The centrifugal superchargers tend to be bigger impellers, and they tend to not be spun as fast as your typical turbocharger. But what's the price of what? Have you ever run a Latham supercharger? I haven't. I've only ever seen one of those in person, and that was long ago when I was with the guys at Extrude Home. They had one there. They're pretty cool looking, though. They look like a jet engine. If I need heads for my OQ4, is it worthwhile to put rec port heads? Yeah, take a look. I have videos up on all of that. You can see a rec port head versus a 317. You can see a rec port head versus a 799, which is at 243. You can see all of that stuff. And a rec port head makes, of all the factory heads, a factory rec port head makes the most power of any of those heads. But there's also a trade-off. Wish we could have access to a Garrett with the AMR would be, so you want to do a compound with the AMR and then a turbo? Bypassing the blower is unnecessary on a roots blower. It's actually not unnecessary. It would be very beneficial to bypass it. And then if you could decouple the blower too, that would definitely be beneficial. Because you now have the parasitic loss associated with the supercharger, with driving the supercharger, which the turbo you don't have. So we're at 95% and 5%. So obviously people do want to see the more blower dyno information. I'll turn that off. And we have 1 minute. Let's do a 1 minute thing. Flashlight. Fascinated. Have you made a video about ring gap? Yes, and the supercharger doesn't need more ring gap than a turbo does. They both need enough gap to where you're not putting the temperature in to make the rings butt, and you're just going to be in the safe zone for both of them. So 6.5 thousandths per inch of bore is normally what we go with. I'm scrolling back, see if I missed something. Oh, I never went to live feed, right? Go to live feed right before I leave. Just, because that's what we do it. Boost novice. This will be the last one that I talk about. So you did a test and the getting rid of the mechanical water pump picked up 10 wheel horsepower. Going to an electric water pump, that's a lot. That's a lot. And on that note, it's time to go. But I'll be back tonight. I'm working on a big block Chevy video right now, so hopefully that will be up before we're getting back together tonight. I'll see you guys all later. Bam, 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 bam.